Good evening, Namaskar. I, Kriti Vadhera, would like to welcome all the teachers, learners, educators, students, and viewers to CIET NCRT's special live phone-in program. Today is June 5th, World Environmental Day, and on behalf of NCRT, I would like to throw greetings to each one of us who are watching us live today. You are watching us live on PM eVidya's channel number 9 to 12, and you're watching us live on our official YouTube channel, which is NCRT Official. So for today's special live phone program, the topic which we will be dealing up in next 30 minutes for you will be ecosystem restoration in the content of school education. With us, we have Dr. C.V. Shimre from Department of Science and Mathematics, NCRT. We would like to welcome our guest today for this wonderful discussion on World Environment Day.
Thank you, Kriti.
And my greetings to you as well, Dr. Shimre, on World Environment Day.
Thank you. Same to you.
And before we start with today's wonderful discussion on ecosystem restoration in school, in content of school education, I would like to remind all our viewers here that if you wish to ask any questions to our expert, you may dial on our toll-free number. Number would be 8800440559. And if you wish to watch us live on our official YouTube channel by the name of NCRT Official, and there also in the live chat box, you may send all your suggestions and questions for today's program. There are certain other mediums through which you can contact us. You can send all your suggestions on DTH.class9 for class 9 and vice versa for class 10th, 11th, and 12th. The email ID would be dts.class10@ciet.nic.in. So let's begin this discussion on World Environment Day. I welcome you again, Dr. Shimre. World Environment Day, June 5th. Firstly, I would request you to give us a brief to all our viewers. Why do we celebrate this World Environment Day? What is the need? When was it decided that we have to celebrate June 5th as World Environment Day?
Thank you, Kriti, and greetings to you all on this World Environment Day. As Kriti just pointed out, the topic of this discussion, ecosystem restoration in the context of school education. Let me just clarify why we have framed it this way. Because ecosystem restoration is a very huge area, and so we will not be able to cover everything, and many of the things, many of the terms will be very technical, and we don't want to go to that extent. So we are going to stick within the limit of school education, that means covering up to, which will be useful for students up to grade 12. So that's how we have framed this session. So, okay, coming to why or how this World Environment Day began to be celebrated, I'll just show you a few slides because these slides will give you more clarity on how it began and what was the purpose and things like that. And so let me go back to the conference, which was called United Nations Conference on Human Environment, which was held between June 5 to 16 in Stockholm, Sweden. In 1972, this was held in 1972. So this was a very important conference. Whenever we talk about environment, we cannot avoid but talk about this conference, because it is during this conference several decisions, big decisions were taken globally as well as even in different countries, impacting different parts of their states in the countries. And similarly, the United Nations declared 5th June as World Environment Day because this conference began on June 5. And so to mark this conference as well, so the United Nations declared this June 5th as World Environment Day. So that was how it began. And the whole idea was to create awareness amongst people, everybody on this planet, and also to help them take some action so that we are able to protect the environment. So World Environment Day, although it was declared on 5th June to be celebrated on 5th June, but the real observation began from 1974. So the first conference was held in US. So some students might know that different themes are identified for each year. For example, let me just take you to this slide. The first conference, as I said, it was held in 1974, and the theme of the conference was called Only One Earth. So the importance of one Earth that we have, how do we use the resources sustainably and things like that. So it was titled that way. Even for India's context, this has been very important. This conference has been very important because several policy decisions were made. For example, even the constitution was amended. As you can see in this slide, Article 48A was added in the constitution, where it says that the state shall endeavor to protect and improve the environment, safeguard the forest and wildlife in the country. So this article itself was added in the constitution of India. So that shows how important the result of that conference was. So let me also take you back again to the other themes that have been considered over the years. So you can see here in 1984, the theme was on desertification because of the importance of how deserts should be taken care, how things should be, or how lands are being degraded, which is converting into deserts. And so how do we avoid that? So the theme desertification was identified. In 89, it was global warming. In 91, it was climate change, need for global partnership. Then coming to 2018, beat plastic pollution, because we got to know that we have to beat plastic pollution, and so that was a theme that was given in 2018. 2019, it was on beat air pollution. We all know about the impact of air pollution it has on our health, and also on climate change, you know. Then in 2020, we had time for nature, because we are spending so little time in the nature, and so we are not aware what's happening in nature, and so the theme was time for nature. And this year, we have the theme ecosystem restoration. So that's in brief about how World Environment Day began and what are the themes that have been chosen over the years depending upon the need of that particular period of time, you know. So, yeah.
So, Dr. Shimri, now when we have told our viewers that why it is celebrated and how it is celebrated, when it began, so now it's time for us to, I would request you to throw some light on this year's title itself, which is Ecosystem Restoration.
Yeah, so to in order to explain that, let me take you one slide which gives you some statistics. So you don't really have to, get the exact number of what these statistics are saying. For example, you know, 75% of land have been degraded, wetlands have been hit the hardest, 87% were lost globally in the last 300 years. Between 1970 and 2012, you know, how populations or biodiversity was lost. You can see the numbers there. And if this trend continues, it says 95% of the Earth's land areas could be degraded by 2050. And you know, and also we can see in the slide that all kinds of ecosystem ranging from forests, grasslands, croplands, wetlands, name it, all kinds of ecosystems are in need of protection and restoration. And so this is the background behind the restoration of ecosystem. So you can see the importance of that. So if we not mend our ways, or if we do not do something about it, what can happen? As it says, 95% of Earth's land areas could be degraded by 2050, and that is going to be disastrous for human beings, for the civilization itself. So based on these observations that we have to do something about restoration of the ecosystem, United Nations declared this 2021 to 2030 as a decade on ecosystem restoration. So keeping in view all the things that could happen if we do not take care of the ecosystem. So this 10 years, the coming 10 years starting from this year, has been declared as a decade on ecosystem restoration. That means that we have to do a lot of things during this 10 years so that we avoid the disastrous impact of ecosystem degradation in the future. It's not that we are going to work only for this 10 years, but the focus is that we really have to do something during this 10 years so that we don't come across those disastrous events that we might face if we don't act now. And so United Nations Decade on Ecosystem Restoration will be formally launched, in fact, today. Events have already started yesterday evening to welcome this UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration. So the whole idea is to prevent degradation of lands or ecosystem, to halt or to stop further degradation, and also to reverse the degraded ecosystem. That means prevent, halt, and reverse. Whatever we have done, so we want to reverse some of those things. And whatever things that is right now, we want to keep it as such. We don't want to degrade it further, and we want to prevent it. We want to take steps so that we can prevent further degradations in the future. And the global effort is aimed at restoring the planet and ensuring one health for people and nature. Because nature, we are all concerned about the health, but we have always left alone this nature. But now the effort should be one health for people as well as for nature. So we want the nature to be healthy. We want ourselves, we want human beings to be healthy. So that is an attempt, that is a goal of this UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration. And this year's theme, Ecosystem Restoration, is under the campaign Reimagine, Recreate, and Restore. So it's a very catchy campaign or slogan. And if we really work in these three fields, start reimagining how we're going to live in the coming years, and how do we recreate, how do we restore things we have destroyed or degraded, things like that. So that's how the campaign tagline has been: Imagine, Recreate, and Restore. And so that is in brief again about United Nations Decade on Ecosystem Restoration, and how this year's theme was chosen to be ecosystem restoration. Yeah.
Okay, so this is about today. The title of this year's Environment Day, Ecosystem Restoration, viewers. Dr. Shimre, from very early stages, if I talk about, right from the primary level, we are introducing environmental sciences, EVS, as a subject to our children. And there are various terminologies that we talk about in terms of environmental sciences. Degradation is one of them. So if we talk about ecosystem as a degradation, what do you feel about it? I would like you to share your thoughts about ecosystem degradation with our viewers.
Yeah, so if we have to talk about ecosystem degradation, maybe it will be good for students to understand in one or maybe recapitulate what ecosystem is. So I have some slides regarding that. So they all know about this. I'm sure students who are watching know the definition of what ecosystem is. Ecosystem consists of all living organisms and the non-living organisms in an area where these two living as well as the non-living components, they interact. What is important here is that natural ecosystems are self-sustaining, you know. So this is very, very important. For example, think of a forest, a natural forest. Who goes and water that? We don't take care. We don't have to take care of that, you know. Natural ecosystems are self-sustaining. It is when we intervene, when we disturb, then things go wrong. So these are the two, the definition as well as one very important characteristic of ecosystem, that it is self-sustaining. And as far as possible, every attempt that we are working towards restoration is also so as to make it more sustaining, you know, more sustainable. So coming to that, ecosystem, there are different kinds of ecosystems, as we mentioned. This simple, the tide pool can also be an ecosystem. This whole lake can be an ecosystem. This all mountain can be an ecosystem. So ecosystem can be many again. But what is again very important here at this point is that there are two fundamental processes that happens in ecosystem: nutrient cycle as well as energy flow. Nutrient cycle, as in how nutrient cycle, for example, carbon cycle, for example, nitrogen cycle, how they cycle in nature, you know. So that's about nutrient cycle. Energy flow is how energy flows from one trophic level to the other, starting from solar energy. So so we talk about 10% transmission, or 10% where energy, 10% of those energies pass on to the next level of the trophic level. So that's what it means. So when we say that ecosystem is degraded, what we are saying is that we are disturbing this nutrient cycle as well as the energy flow. So here where students have to try to connect this. So ecosystem degradation means that we are disturbing the nutrient cycle in some way at some point through different things that we do, or we are destroying or disrupting the energy flow. Maybe we have removed or some of the populations of some organisms in some trophic level have drastically reduced or drastically increased, and so there has been changes, there has been fluctuations because of which nutrient cycle as energy flow is being impacted. So students also know about the food chain and food web. So when we are saying that we are degrading the ecosystem, that means that food chains and food webs are disturbed. So coming to your question of ecosystem degradation. So we degrade all kinds of ecosystems, for example, forests, soil, wetlands, aquatic freshwater, as well as marine grasslands, croplands, and urban lands. Forests, we know why we degrade that. I mean, how degradation of forest takes place for different kinds of purpose, maybe for agriculture, maybe for industries, maybe for several other things. Soil, we degrade soil through our bad practices, for example, bad cropping practices or use of fertilizers which are bad for the soil. Then we also degrade wetlands for many other purposes, for setting up housing, you know, those big apartments that comes up by destroying the wetlands, or for agricultural purpose. So we degrade the ecosystem in several ways, but we degrade all of it, as I have listed some of those. So again, coming back to why are we degrading? If we go back to that, we will understand that there are poor waste management. We're not managing them well. And there are some policies which are not useful. For example, you cannot give, we have seen some of the impacts of intensive farming because there were a lot of subsidies given to farmers, and that can be misused by farmers, you know. So harmful policies can also cause ecosystem, can also be the reason of ecosystem degradation. Weak laws, you know, laws has to be very strong so that there is no loophole, so that people do not get away looking at the loopholes. So laws have to be strong. Because of weak laws, ecosystem degradation can happen. Industrial accidents. We have just come across this few days back, the fire in Sri Lanka, in a ship in Sri Lanka, you know, which was carrying 25 tons of chemicals which are harmful. So you don't know what's going to happen to that part of ocean where those chemicals have been spread over there. So commercial pressures, concretization of urban areas, reduction in green spaces. Climate change is also causing ecosystem degradation. You know, through warming of oceans, you are losing a lot of biodiversity. Change in the flowering season, which can impact, you know, fruiting and all kinds of things. Conflicts is one thing that can happen. Because of conflicts between two communities, you know, the whole ecosystem can be disturbed. But most importantly, it is our greed. I would say that it is our greed which is leading everything, all kinds of ecosystem degradation. So again, that's in brief about how are we degrading the ecosystem and what is causing this, you know. Yeah, I think I will leave it at that because we cannot keep on talking about this. Yeah, Kriti, I think I should stop it at that about ecosystem degradation.
Right. So it was about degradation. I just asked you. And now if we come to the title itself about the restoration of ecosystem. So basically, why should we restore it? And what can be done to restore our ecosystem?
Okay, yes. So coming to the main point of our topic of discussion. So why should we do that? Because degradation has impacted a lot. For example, you can see this. We are doing this Zoom live session because of the COVID pandemic. And why did that happen? Because we disturbed, something has happened in the nature because of which the pathogen has moved out from the natural inhabitat to human population. So it's very important to understand now the connection between the health of nature. Healthy nature will lead to healthy life. That means good health to us. So we need healthy nature so that we have good health. So that is the connection. So I will not go into the detail, and later on if we have time we can talk more about that. And also ecosystem degradation is already affecting the well-being of an estimated 3.2 billion people. You know, that's a lot, almost 40% of the world's population. Every single year we're losing ecosystem services worth and all those, the statistics you can see there, a lot is happening because of which, because of the impact of ecosystem degradation. A lot of jobs are lost, livelihood. 80 million green jobs are provided by ecosystem. So if we degrade the ecosystem because we have degraded the ecosystem, so we have lost a lot of jobs, and so many people are dependent on the ecosystem services, and so because of the fact that we have degraded a lot of ecosystem, those many people are now struggling for their livelihood. So those are very few points that I have just listed down, the impact of ecosystem degradation. So you can just see here, so how the zoonotic diseases, that means diseases which are transferred from animal to human beings. So you can see there are all kinds of animals there from which we got different kinds of diseases. So restoration, coming to your point of restoration, so those are the impacts that we have. We have just seen the impacts of ecosystem degradation. So why should we restore? So we want to improve on all those areas which we have just mentioned. We don't want to repeat all those things. We want to improve things. So how it's going to, coming to what exactly is ecosystem restoration is, we had discussed a few points when we were talking about the UN decade on ecosystem restoration, where we said we want to prevent, we want to halt, and we want to, do certain things. For example, here, 2 points. We can just say we want we want to recover the degraded or the destroyed ecosystem, and we also want to maintain, which are still intact, So those are the things that we want to do. We want to prevent, we want to halt, we want to restore, in short. So which we had already discussed in the earlier slides. So all kinds of ecosystems can be restored, You can see the forests, farmlands, grasslands, savannas, mountains. But the way we are going to restore all this is going to be different. So some of the ways that we can restore is through actively planting, that is growing trees, greening cities, rewilding gardens. When we think about gardens, we think about beautiful flowers, similar flowers in stretches of lands. That's what we visualize of a nice, beautiful garden. But we don't want that. If we want to restore ecosystem, we have to make it wild, as natural as possible. We want to grow different varieties which are native to that place, So rewilding gardens, rewilding places wherever there are plants. So that's what we want to do, by removing pressure so that nature can recover on its own. So don't disturb nature further, just leave it alone. It will be fine. It will start restoring itself. Cleaning up rivers and coasts. This is one of the things which is being taken up even in India, Clean Ganga Mission, all those things. We know that changing diets, students should be able to connect this changing diets. How changing diets can even have help restore ecosystem, Look at the dairy products. So, and for dairy products, you have to have cattle. Cattle have to feed on grasslands. So if there is overgrazing, how can those overgrazing impact the ecosystem? So that's the connection. See, there's several other connections where you can connect diet with ecosystem restoration, but I'm just giving you one example of that. So this is how ecosystem restoration is done. So benefits of ecosystem restoration is, see, if you look at this data again, 350 million hectares of, degraded terrestrial aquatic ecosystem could generate 9 trillion US in ecosystem services. That means we're going to gain a lot if we restore ecosystem. Again, it says, second point, 13 to 26 gigatons of greenhouse gases can be removed if we restore ecosystem. That means if you plant more trees, if you do all other things right, then you are going to remove this 13 to 26 gigatons of greenhouse gases. And greenhouse gases cause global warming, it causes further climate change. And the impact of climate change, it can impact all areas of our life, starting from agriculture, even our lifestyle, everything. So restoring ecosystem is going to help every sector. The economic benefit, you can see there, it exceeds the cost, the benefits that we are going to get is like at least 3 times more, at least 3 times more. And as I said, it's going to keep global temperature rise below 2 degrees Celsius. Again, if you restore ecosystem, you're going to avoid the expected biodiversity extinction. So you're going to save a lot of organisms from getting extinct, and you are going to reduce your average global temperature if you restore your ecosystem. And it is also going to help you regulate diseases, as you just mentioned about COVID-19. So there's a lot of benefits that we're going to get if we restore the ecosystem. So there are some more here. So it says that US dollars invested in we're going to get $30 in return. See the benefit of that. So yes, we have to spend some money, we have to invest something, but the benefit that we're going to reap out of it is like 30-fold there according to this point. And you can see more of that. You're going to save a lot of biodiversity there. You're going to save a lot of employment, which we discussed just before, 2 slides before that. So you're going to save a lot of lives from people from getting, starvation and poverty and all of those. So at the end, what's going to happen is that if you restore your ecosystem, we are going to be able to achieve sustainable development goals, which is why we are doing all of these things, right? So I'll again leave it at that, because we can talk and talk, keep on talking about all these benefits that we can get out of ecosystem restoration.
Right, absolutely. Dr. Shimre, today this conversation with you has taken me right back. I'm getting flashbacks of 1 year back of exactly the same time when this lockdown and this pandemic happened. And as you said, that Mother Nature also needs some me time. You have to sometimes leave it alone. And we observed that, we being Delhiites, we observed that air quality index suddenly came down as vehicles were not there. And, right from Jalandhar, the view of Himalayas was visible as pollution levels were so down. I'm sure you will absolutely agree to what I'm saying.
Yeah. That's true. Definitely air pollution went down. We had clean air, but we could not enjoy the clean air because we could not go out, But also the adverse impacts of that is that we used a lot of masks, we used a lot of other things, PPE kits and all those things, which also again adversely impact the environment. So we have benefits somewhere else because we stopped moving around because of transportation, we stopped, air travel was stopped, put on hold, and all of those things. We got some benefit out of that, but at the same time, we also, there were also things which adversely impacted the environment. So, but at least we learned a lesson that we can do things if we want to do things. We can stay locked in, So that means that we are resilient enough to do things the right way if we want to really do it. So that's what we learned through this pandemic, I would say.
Absolutely. And in a way, we have been taking Mother Nature granted, in a way. But I guess today, on June 5th, World Environment Day, we all should pledge to stick to this title, which is ecosystem restoration. Although we conducted this session in terms of school education, but it is a need of the hour, I would say, Dr. Shimre, that we all have to restore ecosystem around us. What would you say about this?
That's true. Everybody, but the best part of this ecosystem restoration thing is that everybody can participate. I have one slide which I can just show it to students, which will be useful for students, Students might think that, okay, so what is my role in all of this? Schools might think that what is their role in all of these things? How can they even contribute in ecosystem restoration? When we talk about use of word ecosystem, they think that, okay, that's something very far from them, in the forest, out there in the wild. But just around their schools or in their campuses, they can, as I said, they can make things as natural as possible. Biodiversity garden. Plant all those plants which are native to that place, invite more insects, invite more organisms, which are native to that place, so that the biodiversity is improved. Practice all kinds of environmentally friendly habits, which will in turn impact, or it will in turn benefit or help in ecosystem restoration. And keep working with community, because schools have to work with community, otherwise they cannot. Many of the things that we have to do is we have to work together, We cannot do things in isolation, and especially when we are talking about ecosystem. It is a system, and so we have to work together. And so these are some of the things students can actually do in the schools. Schools can take up initiative to take up some of this, because setting up biodiversity garden is very simple, It's as simple as just growing some plants instead of planting some beautiful trees or beautiful flowers out there. So start rewilding, which we just use the term. So there are things happening around the world, even in India. I just have some slides there. See, this was Yamuna Biodiversity Park, which have been restored. You know, now you can see the sprawling, its ecosystem is totally restored, as you can see there. So things are happening in different parts of the world as well, even in India as well. And students can go and find out where are things, restoration programs going in their places, or where it needs to happen. You know, that could be a study for students where they can look out for places where they can restore some of those degraded ecosystem. It need not be a huge hectares and hectares of land, but it can be a small area which they can manage, you know. So the little things definitely help, and everybody can contribute in this effort.
Absolutely, everyone can contribute in restoring the ecosystem around us. And yes, we all humans have been taking Mother Nature in a granted way, but on this particular day of World Environment Day, June 5th, we all should pledge to preserve, to nurture, to restore our ecosystem. And we should actually think that the earth does not belong to us, but we actually belong to us. In a way, we have been taking it in granted. But through the thoughts shared by Dr. Shimre, I guess many viewers have pledged today by with restoring ecosystem around us. I really thank Dr. Shimre for joining us today for this wonderful conversation on World Environment Day.
Thank you so much for having me.
And reviewers remain connected to PM eVidya to watch NCERT's resource material. Thank you. Namaskar.